Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Vox DFS Firelines and VoxDFS.com. I am your host, Justin Skullrood. Follow with me, as always, our founder of Skull King Fantasy Football.
It is me, Ryan Skullrood, and fantasy, I'd say fantasy football enthusiast, but right now it's not making me very enthusiastic. How's that?
Yes, this is our Week 13 waiver wire show, as well as a little bit of some wrap-up of Week 12. Hopefully your Week 12 was better than Antonio Gates or Brandon Cooks. A lot of work for absolutely nothing. But we're going to get into the show here, getting into some news and notes. A little bit of news from tonight's game, the Monday Night Football game, is that Jordan Matthews had to go to the locker room twice in this game, yet still came back in the game. This is something to monitor moving forward in the leagues as well. The Chargers got some good news today. In that Tyrell Williams is good despite suffering a shoulder injury in Sunday's win over Houston. This is really, really good for San Diego because I don't know who they'd have left to throw to. I mean,
let's say he's their only wide receiver now.
It's one of those things that we've joked on two of our shows about the infirmary ward shows, but the infirmary ward is the San Diego offense. Unless your name is Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon, you have been injured this season.
Well, they do have Dontrelle Inman, who in the past has had productive games. And it just so happens this last Sunday was a productive game, 6 for 6 for 119 yards and a TD. He has never been consistent because he is, if you look at the depth chart, he's really like their number 4 or 5 wide receiver. So, he's not, again, he's in the right matchup, he can be good. But, again, Tyrell Williams is proving that he's not necessarily matchup proof, but he is very good. He can be very good in the right instance and even be able to collect targets. But really, right now, he is their only guy because Travis Benjamin either can't stay healthy or just isn't. He's just that little firecracker that can make a big bang like he did when he was with Cleveland every once in a while. So,
Derek Carr, according to reports, is dealing with a double dislocation in his finger. That was one of the grossest things I've ever seen happen to a finger. If you watch that snap, but indications are that he should be fine for next week. That one was definitely – honestly, how does a quarterback get a dislocated finger on the snap? You think, that's something they practice every day? That just, that one kind of – it's kind of odd that that's how it happened. If they actually show the snap in slow-mo on some of the game film, you can actually watch his hand comes up really quick, and next thing you know, you see the ball hit his finger, and his pinky's pointing that way when the rest of his hand is going that way. Yeah, that's never a good thing. I don't like dislocating my finger once, let alone twice. But moving on to Houston, Texans coach Bill O'Brien said today that he expects Lamar Miller to be quote-unquote fine after Lamar Miller limped off the field with an ankle injury in Sunday's Week 12 loss to the Chargers. Is this cause for any sort of concern in your opinion, Ryan, or do you still feel that Lamar Miller should be pretty good? He is playing Green Bay, which has been kind of a running back mess the last couple of weeks.
Who else are they going to give the ball to?
Alfred Blue?
So like I said,
maybe.
Who else are they going to give the ball to? Lamar Miller – he should be fine. He may be questionable for this next week, but I think as of this point, he's pretty much played through a lot of different injuries this year. He's still going to hit that 1,000 yards this season. It's possible he could do it against Green Bay. Now, Green Bay did a pretty decent job tonight of stopping the run. It was, the dump-off passes and the screen plays that they were giving up a whole bunch of yardage to Darren Sproles tonight. But I think now that Clay Matthews is back, they've moved him back into that middle linebacker role, which is not his natural position. He's naturally a outside linebacker / DN type to blitz the quarterback. But now that he's back in there, I think they'll be a little bit better at stopping up the run. So Lamar Miller could have a tough game this next week at Green Bay, but I don't see this as much of a trouble. And now, if you need Lamar Miller to play in order to make the playoffs, since this is going to be your last, for most leagues, this is the last week of the regular season as you go into a 3-week playoff of 14, 15, 16. It kind of depends on who else you have in the matchup. For right now, I'm sticking with Lamar Miller just because he's probably one of the better running backs that you have.
Yeah, hopefully this is not the last week of your regular season and you're hoping for DeMarco Murray to play because, sorry, he's not playing. Coach Todd Bowles confirmed Monday that Ryan Fitzpatrick will remain the Jets' starting quarterback for Week 13 against the Colts. We'll touch a little bit more on this and the ramifications of how this affects the rest of the season. But a quick look, I believe that this is good news for Brandon Marshall because the Jets play Indianapolis and San Francisco in the next 2 weeks. And so you're looking at early rounds in the playoffs, or at least last week of the regular season, the first week of the playoffs, being very, very good matchups for Ryan Fitzpatrick in the passing game.
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, Fitzpatrick still hasn't been all that great for Brandon Marshall. After that monstrous season that Marshall had last year, 100 targets, 49 receptions, 668 yards, and only 3 TDs. He is going to miss 1,000 yards. So much for that bet that he made with his Carr with Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I'm sorry, especially after Antonio Brown went off.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that Fitzpatrick is a gunslinger, that he's meant to be a backup quarterback and a fill-in quarterback. The Jets need to actually draft a real quarterback, not Bryce Petty or Christian Hackenberg. So they're kind of in trouble anyways. Brandon Marshall, he has a couple of good matchups coming up, which could help. I'm not. I see Brandon Marshall as he's putting up wide receiver 3 numbers. And I don't see how. I mean, I think his next
not this week.
I think his next 2 matchups put him in wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, hopefully he'll have some big games the next couple of weeks. We joked about it to start off the show, but Saints coach Sean Payton attributed Brandon Cook's 0-target Week 12 to the Rams' coverages. In my opinion, no one else had a problem with the coverages of the Rams. Everyone else got the ball. Even Kobe Fleener got yardage when he's kind of the last target on the field. Everyone was getting touches. To me, it may be a fluke, but there's this high splash, but there's always this potential for getting absolutely nothing from Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I mean, even Willie Snead had 5 catches for 38 yards and threw a touchdown pass to Tim Hightower. So, and luckily that that pass is what really saved Willie Snead in one of my leagues. Snead's been another disappointment as well. Michael Thomas has pretty much taken over. Michael Thomas has taken over that offense.
Yes.
And I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, if you look at the guy's actual stats, not just what he has done, but just his body type. Let me pull it up here. His actual stats. He is what? He is 6'3", 212 pounds. He is built like a big wide receiver. He's a little bit more string beanie, but 789 yards so far, 7 TDs. He is by far the best rookie wide receiver so far.
Yes.
Sterling Shepard has had some good games, but hasn't had the consistency that Michael Thomas has. I'm trying to think who are some of the other rookie wide receivers. Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's, had a couple of good games, but hasn't really been a focus.
Yeah.
The Bengals just are playing horrible. And then, who is another rookie wide receiver? Laquan Treadwell's been nothing. I mean, he's got, a couple catches on the season? So
that, I think, is more the Vikings offense, but that should have come into play at the beginning of the season for anyone who drafted him.
Yeah, well, he didn't get his first catch until like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, I just, I think I think this is more Michael Thomas is just that good than anything else. Cooks, it's kind of back and forth. I think that he is a feast or famine player. So
he's really a slot receiver pretending to be a number one.
Really, if they moved him to the slot and just kept Snead and Thomas on the outside, I think that could really help. I think that could be really good for their offense.
I think it would be much better, but once again, we're not paid NFL coaches.
We're not coaches. We BS about fantasy football. So
Jordan Reed did not practice today. He did have an injury in the game, but came back and did score 2 touchdowns. I'm going to touch a little bit more on this later in some of our waiver wire pickups. Chuck Pagano is optimistic that T.Y. Hilton will be back and able to play Monday night against the Jets. This is good news for Colts owners in that for as much as you got penalized for the short week with Andrew Luck, you get an extra long week in getting T.Y. Hilton back and able to play for the Jets for the Monday Night Football game. I think this bodes well for Moncrief either way because, once again, Luck is back. And whether or not T.Y. Hilton is back for the game or not, it's good for Dante Moncrief because Luck is back. If T.Y. Hilton is out, you'll see that boost to Dante Moncrief like there was this last week when T.Y. Hilton went out.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Hilton can't play, that provides a big boost to Moncrief, again, because Luck is back. If Hilton does play, honestly, I don't think it hurts Luck. I think that just provides Moncrief the ability to come more with the shallow crossing routes, let Hilton go deep to pull the coverages away. So either way, I'm still huge on Moncrief. But again, they're playing the New York Jets. The only thing that would really affect that game is weather, which I have not seen what the weather's supposed to be like yet for that game. So I can kind of that the weather stats that we have on Skull King usually come out about 4 or 5 days before game time. So, check back on that later.
And it seems like the perpetual revolving door with Gronkowski this year with injuries. Now it's his back. The week before it was a lung. I think this is par for the course for Rob Gronkowski. You should have known this coming in drafting him. I drafted him last year knowing the risks, and it panned out. This year, it's not looking like it's going to pan out for Rob Gronkowski owners. He's a beast when he's in there, but right now he's playing less than half the games. I mean, he did not play in week 1, 2, basically didn't play in 3 or 4. He was monster in 5 through 8, but since the bye week, he's only really played 1 game. And so he's playing in less than half. It's not looking good right now. He does play for the Patriots, so you're not worried about his chances because they're in a good offense. But with LA, Baltimore, Denver, and the Jets, they're going to be playing stiffer competition as the season moves on. So unless he can get on the field against LA, you may look, if on the off chance that your league still has trades available, I'd look to try and dish him if you can, just for name recognition, and maybe someone who's maybe a little bit deeper at tight end, and you might be able to get something that will actually score you consistent points rather than this mix and match game, or you pick up a solid backup tight end.
Which we have a solid backup tight end that we're going to name later that we've named many times throughout this podcast.
I will not do that this week because I ranted about it last week, so it's your turn this week. So that wraps up our major pieces of news. One that I did want to touch on was that Jeremy Hill did get a little bit of a tweak in the game for Cincinnati, but indications are that is not too serious. I kind of just feel bad for Ohio football fans because both teams
professional Ohio football fans.
Yes,
Ohio State
professional Ohio football fans. They are really the most injured teams outside of maybe San Diego. They're the two most injured teams in football right now, and so it's just not looking good for those two teams for the rest of the season. Moving on to our waiver wire picks, unless you have another piece of news that you want to touch on, Ryan.
I think that was it for the news. I wanted to do a quick shout out here to our not necessarily advertisers, some of the special offers that we have going on.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Get it pulled up here. Here we go. I want to talk about NFL Shop, guys. If you have not been on NFLshop.com for a lot of this great deals that they have going on, at this point you will have missed, once this podcast airs, you will have missed the Black Friday deals. We got together, my brothers and I got together and got my dad a nice Earl Thomas jersey for Christmas this year. And we can say that because my dad doesn't listen to this podcast. So,
well, it's because he doesn't play fantasy football.
He doesn't play fantasy football, so
it's not a reflection upon the show. It is a reflection upon his interest in our hobby.
But they have some great jerseys. I mean, it's the place to get your jerseys. It's the number one spot to get them from. It's the NFL place to get jerseys and memorabilia. They've got all the salute to service gear, which, let's be honest, those outfits are freaking awesome. The hats, the jerseys, the sweatshirts. I would love to get something from there. For Christmas this year. Hint, hint to all the family members who watch or who listen to this show or watch it on YouTube. But you can also do customizable jerseys. Get your whatever name and number you want on there. And so hop on to skulkingfootball.com/NFL shop to get on there and see what they've got going on. Again, skulkingfootball.com/NFL shop. That's all one word. If you sign up on there for their email and mobile updates, you'll actually get 10% off your first order. So again, skulkingfootball.com/NFL shop in order to get some cool gear either for yourself or to give away for Christmas. So all right, that's there's our advertisement.
And then we're going to dive into the quarterback position. Do you have two or one quarterbacks, Ryan?
I have two. I'll let you have the one that we both kind of agreed on. Unless you have two also.
I have two also. I want to stick to my principles at the beginning of the year, and I'm willing to eat words on this one, and you can talk about the one that I don't want to talk about. But I recommend you pick him up. I just don't want to say his name.
Okay. Well, you go ahead first. You start it off.
Okay. The one I'm not going to mention, I'll leave that one for you. But Alex Smith is in 25% of leagues. This is the one that I will name, and I recommend picking him up at least for this week because he plays Atlanta. Now, yes, Atlanta is a strong offensive team, but they are the league's worst defense against the quarterback position. They do have a very, very strong corner in Trufant, but the rest of the team is giving up points to the quarterback position, you're talking about wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 and tight end are just doing monstrous things against Atlanta. And so I like Alex Smith this week. It gets tougher in the playoffs. There are not some very good matchups with him playing teams like Denver, Tennessee, San Diego in Week 17 if your league goes that long. But I really like Alex Smith this week in Atlanta, in a dome, not having to worry about the Kansas City weather.
Real quick, you mentioned Desmond Trufant. They are looking at he may have to have season-ending surgery.
Ooh, how did I miss that?
Well, that was just put up yesterday. I think Sleeper Bot missed that one. So they.
Well, it's also a defensive player.
Yeah, it's a defensive player, and we love Sleeperbot. We think it's a great tool to use to help you figure out, kind of starts and sits, kind of be ahead of the game as much as possible in terms of finding out who to play, who not to play. But when it comes to defenses, it is lacking a little bit. They do some IDP stuff, but a lot of their IDP players that they talk about are interior linemen and linebackers, guys that are going to have high points in IDP leagues. It's according to ESPN, Vaughn McClure says, although the Atlanta Falcons refused to declare Desmond Trufant out for the season, the vibe in the locker room Sunday was one of a team prepared to proceed without its Pro Bowl corner. So at this point, it looks like Trufant may be out for the rest of the year. Looks like it's a torn pectoral muscle. And at this point in the season, I mean, if you have to have surgery on a torn pec, you're definitely done for the season.
That's never a good thing.
And even then, it can be and here is the fact that he's going for a follow-up appointment to get a second opinion means, okay, it's obviously bad and he just didn't want to hear it, so we're going to try it again. I at this point look at Trufant being out. So, Alex Smith was actually the other name that I had as well because of the matchup and just because of how bad Atlanta is giving up fantasy points to quarterbacks. Let me load up the stats real quick. Total defense. There we go. Pass yards per game. Atlanta gives up 200. They have passed now Oakland, Carolina, Indianapolis, and Dallas as the most pass yards per game now at 282 pass yards a game. So they're a good team to stream against. Another reason would be because of how high-powered their offense is and getting ahead of teams.
Other teams just have to throw.
They have no choice but to just throw the ball on them in order to keep it going. So, especially some of the weaker teams Kansas City, let's be honest, Kansas City is not necessarily a weaker team. They just went into Denver and beat Denver. And so they usually try to do it more on like the running game, but Spencer Ware didn't have a great game this last week. So, they could air it out a little bit if they need to. And plus, the thing about Alex Smith is he can run the ball a bunch if he needs to. He tends to lead. I mean, he's been down this year, but he tends to be near the upper third of quarterbacks in terms of rushing yards for the season. So I agree with you there on Alex Smith. The other one, the one that we don't like to mention.
It's only because he plays for San Francisco.
It's because he plays for San Francisco. Colin Kaepernick. Unfortunately, this man has returned to fantasy relevance. If we look at his last,
my question, side note, while you're looking that up, why did it take so long for Chip Kelly to instate Colin Kaepernick as a starter? Looking at what he has done, he is way more dynamic than Blaine Gabbert, and he fits Chip Kelly's system better than Blaine Gabbert did.
Here's the thing. Colin Kaepernick was also out most of last year with a shoulder injury. He missed a lot of the preseason, if I remember right. And so it wasn't just a matter of him, not playing because they thought that Gabbert was better. I think it also had to do with, Colin Kaepernick's always been a bit of a head case. Forget the whole national anthem story that he's a part of. Forget that. If you just look at on the field and how he deals with his teammates and how he deals with wins and losses, he has been a bit of a head case. And so, when teams can get into his head, he's become irrelevant. Look at how he's played against Seattle, especially when he has to play at Seattle. It doesn't usually turn out too well for him. And so I think that maybe Chip Kelly was looking a little bit into that as well. So, yes, they finally made the decision to get him involved again. It has worked. Colin Kaepernick has become a very solid quarterback to use. And so, I may even pick him up for one of my leagues. One that I'm desperate to get points. I don't necessarily like the quarterback that I have has had a decent season, but he's meeting projections at that end. I need someone who's is possibly going to go off. So, Colin Kaepernick, he's got Chicago this next week. Chicago's not great. They're okay against quarterbacks, but Colin Kaepernick is a different animal because he also runs, and so that provides some extra points there. So, yeah, I'm with you on Colin Kaepernick. I don't like to say it, but I think I think it's good for fantasy owners that he doesn't face Seattle until week 17 when most seasons are already over anyways. So,
and if you made it to the championship with Colin Kaepernick as your quarterback, I don't think you'll need him against Seattle.
No.
The rest of the team was really awesome. And so moving on to the running back position, I only have one. And so this is –
and I've got the same one.
Okay. We're both going to talk about Kenneth Dixon. To me, this has taken longer than I thought it would, but he is now out snapping Terrence West. He's now – they had the same amount of touches, I believe, but he's doing more with those touches, and I think this is the turn of the corner to where he is now more the 60 than the 40 in their share of the workload.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I had seen a stat earlier that I'm trying to and there we go. See if it comes up. No, I don't see. Okay, so maybe it's not going to come up. Oh, great. All this is old stuff, so it doesn't really matter. All right. Well, I'd seen a stat that in the last, was it since week 9? I want to say it was since week 9. Kenneth Dixon has had more yards per carry and more tackles missed on his runs than Terrence West. And that's in like 60 plus rushing attempts for Terrence West and like 35-40 rushing attempts for Kenneth Dixon. I want to say that West has only broken like 9 tackles and Kenneth Dixon has already broken like 17 on almost half the carries, or a little over half the carries. So Kenneth Dixon is proving to be the more productive back in that backfield. So, a lot of us saw this coming. We didn't necessarily see Terrence West being a breakout player, and the couple of weeks that he had where he performed well were surprises, nice surprises. But as far as going forward, we knew that Kenneth Dixon was going to be the guy, especially with how well he played in the preseason. And when he had his MCL injury and had to sit for 4 weeks, that put a damper on. I actually had to drop Kenneth Dixon before he became before he became fantasy relevant just because of injuries on the rest of my team. So Kenneth Dixon, again, he's going up against Miami, and Miami has been pretty good against the run. It will be at home, and Miami has had a little bit more of a struggle stopping up the run away than they do at home. At home, their defense has been pretty suffocating when playing in Miami, and so Kenneth Dixon, while this matchup this week may be a little bit tough for him. What does he have the rest of this season? Kenneth Dixon. He's got he does have it's actually a little bit rough for the rest of the season. He's got at home against Miami, who has a better run defense, but then he's got at New England, which actually that one could be okay. At New England,
defense is not what it once was.
And if we look at a similar style of player to Kenneth Dixon, in say CJ Fiedorowicz, who has a much worse offensive line, CJ Fiedorowicz made the New England defense look silly.
Yes,
and so that could be a good game. Playing at Philadelphia, Philly's run defense has been pretty good at home, and then he's got Pittsburgh in championship week. Pittsburgh's defense is kind of all over the place when it comes to the run. It's just a lack of consistency. And so I think that Dixon's definitely a guy worth owning, to maybe do a spot start. But if you're in desperate need of running back help, go and grab him. Again, he's only owned in 29% of leagues. Get him while you can.
And there are people who still have Terrence West. So if you have Terrence West, I think it's time to move on to Kenneth Dixon, because there's no sense in keeping the backup when you could potentially go out and get the new starter. Moving on to the wide receiver spots, I want to keep this a little short because each of us have three, and none of them are the same. And so I'll go first. We'll kind of go back and forth on this one, Ryan. My number one to pick up is Taylor Gabriel. He had an insane game this week against Arizona. In the slot position, he's getting essentially running plays this last week on 2 screen passes, scored 2 touchdowns. The reason why I have been hesitant in recent weeks is the fact that in the last 4 weeks, once again with the bye week in week 11, he's only got the ball 13 times in 4 weeks. So he's touching the ball 4 times, but he's scored 4 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. He is doing more per touch than any other player in the NFL in fantasy football over the last 4 weeks. So per touch, he's insanely better than anybody else in the league. So though he may not get the workload, what he's doing with what he is getting is doing a lot. And with Kansas City coming up, they have a tough defense, but Gabriel's not going to be going up against the number 1 or number 2 corner in that defense. He's going to be coming into the slot. They're doing things dynamically and getting creative and getting him the ball in the screen game, and he's got the speed to take it to the house. And so I like Taylor Gabriel as my number 1 this week from the wide receiver position.
Yeah, he was kind of the same thing in Cleveland. Him and Travis Benjamin, they were just basically explosive players that could break out for huge games that would go back and forth. So yeah, I can see that. With the consistency that he has shown, I don't see it as chasing points.
No, not the last 4 weeks.
Not with 5 weeks. No, 4 out of the last 5 weeks if you include the bye week. So.
Yeah.
All right, my first one, Tyreek Hill. Good grief. I mean, can anyone stop this guy? I mean, at this point, he has definitely taken over the top wide receiver spot in Kansas City. Next week, he's got Atlanta. And so, yeah, with how he played against Denver, and now he's got Atlanta, who's, one of the worst pass defense teams in the league. He could have a really good game, especially if they need to focus on throwing the ball. He's had in the last 5 weeks, 6 targets, 5 targets, 13 targets, 5 targets, and 10 targets. And so he is getting targeted. What did he have? 3 touchdowns in this last game. One of them receiving, one of them in the return game. So if you have a league that does return yards, definitely you want to be going after Tyreek Hill. And then I think he got a handoff on a. Yeah, in the red zone, I have Spencer Ware, and Spencer Ware lines up as the quarterback in the Wildcat and hands it off to Tyreek Hill for the touchdown.
Aren't you excited for that?
Yeah, that was so. I got beat bad enough in that league that it didn't really matter. So yeah, Tyreek Hill, he's being heavily involved. Again, if you have return yards in your league, yeah, you go pick him up. He's only 37% owned. So your next guy.
My next guy, we mentioned when we talked about Fitzpatrick doing much better and being named the starter. Quincy Enunwa had a very, very good game. 5 catches on 5 targets for 109 yards and 1 touchdown. The next 2 weeks are fantasy football gold. He is playing Indianapolis on Monday night, and he's playing against San Francisco the following Sunday in Week 14. These are 2 of the worst fantasy football defenses in football. These are good games. Yes, Fitzpatrick is the quarterback, but he is not playing Kansas City. He's not playing tough defenses. He just played New England, who's proving to be not as good on defense, not as stout on defense as once thought earlier in the season since their trades. And so right now, I like Quincy Enunwa to continue what he's doing. The targets have always been there. The yardage, not so much, considering the quarterback controversy throughout the season. But I like Quincy Enunwa moving forward, especially for the next 2 weeks. It does get tougher in the second and third week of the playoffs against Miami and New England. But right now, I like Quincy Enunwa.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. Let's be honest. He's had plenty of targets, especially since Decker went out. You look at 11, 7, 7, 5, 4, 11, 4, 6, 5. He's not necessarily getting quality targets because their quarterback play has been horrible. Even when it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, 1 catch on 6 targets because Fitzpatrick can't get him the ball. 1 catch on 4 targets. 4 catches for he has a great game, 93 yards and a TD on 4 catches, but he was targeted 11 times. So, Quincy Enunwa, the opportunity's there. If you need the wide receiver help, yeah, I can see going that direction. So, and again, Indianapolis, if we look at the stats, Indianapolis is giving up, they're the 3rd worst in terms of giving up pass yards. So, that's definitely a way to go. So, my next guy, Tyler Boyd. Again, this is more opportunity because we know for now that AJ Green is still not back. The team doctors or the head coach said that it's still wait and see. I don't think he'll be back for Week 13. I would love to have him back for Week 14 against Cleveland. That's for darn sure. But in the process, if you can get Tyler Boyd has come back right around the last couple of weeks, right around projection. Not too far less, not too far, not too much more. But in terms of since Green went out, he's been the number 2 target behind Tyler Eifert. This last week, 5 catches on 9 targets for 62 yards. So he's a slot receiver, so he's more of a possession guy. He's not going to beat anyone downfield. Even like we said last week when we were talking about picking him up, he's kind of a Keenan Allen type. He's not a burner. He's a possession receiver. He runs pretty good routes, and has pretty solid hands. So Tyler Boyd is mine. Again, that's more opportunity. He's 50% owned, and what else? What else is Andy Dalton going to do? Jeremy Hill's it's Jeremy Hill, Eifert, and Boyd until Green comes back. So you're certainly not going to hand it off to Rex Burkhead anymore.
No. So is that me next?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, my last one is Adam Thielen of Minnesota. Right now, in this last game, he was targeted 11 times. His targets have been there over the last couple of weeks. He scored touchdowns, 4 targets, 5 targets in the last 2 weeks, but he's averaging 5 or 6 targets on an offense that's not scoring very much, but he's facing the third corner of a team, not the first or second corner of a team. So over the last 3 weeks in PPR, he's getting he had 4 weeks ago, scored 12, 17, and 13 with touchdowns week 10 and 11. And this week against Detroit, he had 11 targets. He does have a tougher matchup against Dallas, but once again, he's going up against the third corner and not the second or first corner. I am a full believer that Dallas will be ahead most of this game, and the running backs are not that great in Minnesota right now. And so I see them throwing the ball more, which leads more for more targets for Adam Thielen.
I agree with you there. Dallas right now, in terms of giving up yards overall, pass yards, they're the 4th worst in terms of pass defense. They've given up. Here's the deal, though. They've only given up 19 touchdowns. They only have 4 interceptions, but they've only given up 19 touchdowns. Looking at in terms of like the bottom 7, they're the only team to give up less than 20. So they're giving up a lot of yards, but not necessarily the touchdowns. I think that, going with Thielen, he's going to be a good possession guy, and he's been getting a lot of targets. So yeah, I like Adam Thielen for this week also as a pickup. And then my last one, again, this is deep, and I wish I would have actually mentioned this guy last week. I wanted to and just couldn't bring myself to do it. Marcus Wilson, or Marquise, or Marquess, however you're going to say it. Marcus Wilson, out of the Washington State University, finally has been healthy enough to come back. He came off of IR or whatever it was in week 11. Had one catch for 35 yards. This week comes in, has Matt Barkley, not Jay Cutler, who he actually had some chemistry with, has Matt Barkley and goes 8 catches on 11 targets for 125 yards and a TD. He has now become the de facto number 1 wide receiver for the Chicago Bears over Cameron Meredith, who had been productive throughout the season for the most part, with Alshon Jeffrey out because of non-working PEDs. So he has San Francisco. He's got Detroit, Green Bay's pass defense. Washington has a better pass defense. That's championship week. On December 24th, Christmas Eve. Take Marcus Wilson at this point. He should be a good. Their offense. The team is not very good. They need to just see what they've got. Keep throwing the crap out of the ball. Jordan Howard, Brother Bear, should be running the ball pretty well this next week against San Francisco, which could open up for more opportunities for Marcus Wilson to get passes. So he's only 1% owned. No one owns him. He's owned in one league that I have, and that's one of my the most competitive league I'm in. So that's where I'm going with wide receivers.
Okay, and moving on into the
tight ends.
Ryan, I'll let you go first, since everyone kind of knows where you're going. I'll let you kind of do your thing on a tight end we've been mentioning for weeks.
Can someone please pick up CJ Fiedorowicz and actually listen to what we're saying here? Okay, he's not explosive. We can admit that, okay? However, let's look at what he's done so far this year. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and look at tight ends overall. All players. Tight ends. This is on Yahoo in full point PPR. Not projected. Actual fantasy points. CJ Fiedorowicz is the number 1. He is the number 13 13 wide receiver, and yet he is only 35% owned, and he has been one of the most consistent, tight ends, not wide receiver, tight ends, and he has been one of the most consistent tight ends over the last 9 weeks. If you take out the bye week. If you take out the bye week, it's 8 weeks. So he's had 3 weeks under 10 points in full point PPR, but he's getting he's getting targeted like crazy. He's had 2 weeks of less than 6 targets in the last 8 weeks. Osweiler has no connection whatsoever with DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen it. There's nothing. They have no chemistry. CJ Fiedorowicz has been catching the ball, has been getting targeted heavily. We know that Osweiler can't throw the ball down the field. He likes the short yardage targets. CJ Fiedorowicz is there. I think by the end of the season, Fiedorowicz, again, like we talked about last year, how a few weeks ago, that he would become the Gary Barnidge. Now, he's not collecting the TDs that Barnidge had last year. But Fiedorowicz is becoming a very solid tight end every week. And like we said, he's got Green Bay this week, Green Bay is giving up the 7th most amount of points to tight ends in fantasy football. He's got Indianapolis in week 14. He's got Jacksonville in week 15 and Cincinnati in week 16. He has a cake schedule. Pick him up already. Okay, I'm done. Your turn.
Okay, my tight end to pick up is Vernon Davis. For those of you who have Jordan Reed, no real clear information has come out this week so far, once again, early in the week, about Jordan Reed's injury. But right now, once again, we're talking kind of some basics here when it comes to player personnel. If something comes up late in Jordan Reed's week for his injury, Vernon Davis has proven he can sit in and do not the exact same work, but still have a relevant, solid week. The weeks that he has played since week 6, he's getting, in PPR leagues, he's getting more than 10 points. And so he's getting that production. The only week that he didn't was against Green Bay, and that was more the way the scheme was, and I believe Reed went off in that game as well. And so Vernon Davis is a solid player for when and if Jordan Reed goes down. That's not something you can afford to miss out on. For those of you who are Jordan Reed owners, this is someone you need to pick up, only owned in 9% of leagues.
Yeah, agreed. He's, Vernon Davis, for the most part, we all thought his career was over after Cam Chancellor's messed him up twice when he was in San Francisco, and he proved that he just couldn't be productive for a while. I think he's finally got his head right again. And Kirk Cousins loves throwing to his tight ends. That's kind of been how he's gotten things going the last couple of years. He's been able to throw the deep ball. He's been able to throw the ball around a lot, but his primary focus is throwing to the tight ends. And yeah, if Jordan Reed is out, what I saw here, Jordan Reed only has about 30% of range of motion in his shoulder right now. It was an AC sprain.
Yeah.
So if he cannot manage at least a limited session Wednesday or Thursday, they'll probably be forced to sit him on Sunday. And in that case, yes, you need Vernon Davis. So if you're in trouble and really need the tight end work, or if Jordan Reed is a big part of your team and your scoring, and you have the spot, not necessarily the spot to burn, or if you have someone on your team that's injured and you need to make sure to have that insurance, go ahead and go with pick up Vernon Davis.
Okay, moving on to the defenses. I don't really see a defense that I really want to pick up, and so I'm really defaulting to what you've got, Ryan.
All right. Well, here we go. For the most part, we've kind of live by the rule you stream against two teams/people. You stream against Justin.
Cleveland.
You stream against the Cleveland Browns because they're terrible. Yes, they will put up some points, but for the most part, they're still going to give up. They're still going to give up turnovers and such. So you stream against. So last week was a great week to have the New York Giants. This week, unfortunately, the week that you need to have a solid defense to get into the playoffs to help you score as many points as possible, the Browns are on bye.
How Cleveland of that of them? How Cleveland of them? When you need to rely on them in any way, shape, or form, they can't do it.
They can't do it because they're on a bye week. And so the other person that we stream against is Blake Bortles.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, who's playing Jacksonville this week? Denver. They're already owned. You can't go with Denver's defense. And so at this point, where is Denver's defense? Oh, that's right. Because
it should be 1, 2, or 3.
Denver's defense is 97% owned, so you're not going to get Denver's defense. And so we have to dig a little bit more in order to find defenses that may be worth picking up. And this week, I like, we talked about Adam Thielen and the fact that Detroit's defense is giving up so many yards, or that Dallas's defense is giving up so many yards in the passing game. Sam Bradford is still the quarterback for Minnesota. And for that reason, I am picking up, if I have a defense I'm not so confident in, I am picking up Dallas against Minnesota. They're 47% owned. They have actually managed, let me get back to overall total defense. In terms of yards, yes, Dallas gives up a ton. In terms of passing yards, rushing yards per game, they are top 3. They're number 3 in terms of rush yards per game, which Minnesota has no choice but to throw the ball anyways because they can't run the ball worth the lick of anything gross. In terms of turnovers, of course, turnovers. Why is turnovers not on here? Passing downs. Let's see how many interceptions they've got. 20 sacks, only 4 interceptions. They're not intercepting the ball. Fumbles. Dallas. They've caused 6, and so they're a solid defense, not great but solid. Middle of the road in terms of averages, and so I'm streaming against Sam Bradford, even though it's in Minnesota. I think that Dallas, unfortunately, Dallas keeps it up and plays pretty well against them. The other one that I'm streaming against is I found it somewhat beneficial to stream against Brock Osweiler.
Yes.
And so I am going with Green Bay's defense. Green Bay will be at home this next week against Houston. And their rush defense, like I said, with Clay Matthews back in the lineup, the Green Bay rush defense played much better tonight. I don't have this week's up. And so, wait, or do I? Again, yes, we are so professional here because we have everything already. Or not. Oh, come on.
Gotta love them Wi-Fis.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the Wi-Fi. It was that I kept clicking. I kept going over what the possible weather report for next week was, and it kept blocking. Okay, here we go. So in terms of how many rush yards they give up this week, box score. There we go. Receiving for. Let's go. Rushing. They only gave up. They gave up less than 100 yards. They gave up less than 80 yards, and so right around 80 yards. So yeah, they're still keeping up the rush defense, and that was in Philadelphia. And so I think that they keep that up. I think that Lamar Miller will get his yards. I don't necessarily think that he'll get touchdowns. I think their defense is stepping it up. And so because of that, I like Green Bay's defense. And again, Brock Osweiler has shown that he can't throw the ball to anyone. They may give up some yards to CJ Fiedorowicz or to perhaps DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller has kind of fallen off the map the last since week 3 when he had those 2 breakout games. And so I am totally fine to stream the Green Bay defense, who's only 28% owned. I think it's a good matchup for them at home going up against Houston. So that's what I've got for defenses.
Okay. Any other bits of news that you have for us today, Ryan?
No, just saying good luck as we go into this last week. I hope you get the waiver pickups that you want. I hope that some of our information has been helpful to you. It hasn't helped us.
I would not say that.
So let me put it this way:
injuries are what they are.
Yeah, injury. I've for the most part been lucky in my fantasy football career to avoid injuries. This year, I was not so lucky.
Paid for it all.
I made up for all that luck that I've had the last few years in terms of being able to avoid injuries at key positions. This year, I was not so lucky, and so I think I only have one team above 500. I have multiple leagues where I am in the top 2 or 3 in the league in terms of fantasy points scored against. So it's been a down year for me. A lot of guys scoring a lot of points against me when I'm having mediocre weeks, and so I think that I did a pretty good job this year of drafting, but waiver wire pickups haven't always gone my way. Injuries, just absolutely destroyed me. And so this hasn't been the best season for me. Fantasy-wise, it's actually been one of the worst. This has probably been the worst season for me in my fantasy football career. And so, I hope that the information we give you has at least here and there given you the tools that you need to have a successful season.
And with that, we do want to thank you for stopping by the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. Once again, brought to you by Vox DFS Firelines and VoxDFS.com. I have been your host, Justin Skullroot.
And I am your founder, Ryan Skullroot.
Good luck if this is good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck if this is your playoff week. Good luck in week 1 of the playoffs. For those of you who are trying to finish off and make it into the playoffs, good luck. Once again, we thank you for stopping by and enjoy your week.
All right, we'll talk to you later, guys.